Hello everybody, it's Wyvern here with another bit of Total War, Warhammer 2 Quick Match gameplay. This time around we are on the Wasteland, playing as Brettonia against the forces of the Skaven. And this is a bit of a fun match, and in this cast I'm also going to be trying out a new mic, so if it sounds awful, if it doesn't work, or if you think it's better, be sure to let me know down in the comments, so that I know it's good, and so I know it's alright, or not. Regardless, hopping straight into the fray. The Brettonians, of course, I think have a bit of a decent matchup in this situation because Skaven are just so bad against heavy cav. It's one of their huge issues. So certainly some of it does depend on map. If it's a very open map, Skaven artillery can often get huge value, but nonetheless, I think Brettonians have a little slight edge in this, and I did bring the Fey Enchantress to completely screw over that Skaven arty. You might be wondering why. Well, she has that crazy magic resist to 60%, as well as 15% missile resist, which makes her 75% resistant to things like Warp Lightning Cannons and Poison Wind Globadiers and all that sort of stuff. It basically can't scratch her. She also does have, of course, the Mist the Lady. She causes fear as well, which is great against Skaven, and of course has Mist the Lady, which lets her melt those big infantry blobs. Similarly, the Chalice of Potions, also great nuke for enemy infantry blobs. Favor of the Fae for that extra melee attack, and of course then the usual heals, Earth, Blood, and Regrowth. For the front line here, we did decide to go a little more elite than usual. Holy Wardens of Lamais and Tal anchoring things in the center, providing a bit of staying power as well as ability to melt through Plague Monks and units like that. While on the flanks, we have a lot of chevroned up men-at-arms with shields. And these guys are up to Veterancy rank 4. I had a lot of gold left over, and I didn't feel like bringing peasants. So these guys, of course, with their respectable melee defense and melee attack, they'll be able to dice through clan rats and even hold up things like rat ogres or plague monks in a pinch. Now, on this back line, we do have 3 units of peasant bows with fire arrows, who I think are very potent in this matchup. Anything squishy, which is the vast majority of the Skaven roster, these guys will melt through. And even against, and when you do the math on it, even against things such as Stormvermin, these guys will still be doing more damage than normal arrows. They'll even be doing more damage than normal arrows to things such as Doomwheels with 100 armor, which is one of those interesting things just because of how much higher their base damage is. It's one of those cool little things worth knowing, I think. Backing them up, Grail Guardians here, of course, providing the Fey Enchantress' bodyguard, deployed a little further back, so if my opponent had artillery and they immediately got shots, they would be going into the infantry and not into the knights. In the back, or on the flanks, I suppose, Defenders of the Floodery and Grail Knights on the one end, Grail Knights and Knights of the Lionheart on the other. I don't really think you need to go super elite in this matchup with your cavalry. Some elite is good to deal with Hellpit Abominations and Rat Ogres a little more efficiently, but you really don't need to invest super heavily into it because things like Knights of the Realm and Knights Errant will be more than adequate to deal with crappy Skaven infantry and even things like Rat Ogres. Now you can see the artillery is going to be raining down here. It is going to start wailing on my poor archers fairly shortly. My opponent brought a very heavy artillery and shooting contingent, so Plague Claw Catapult and double Warp Lightning Cannons, definitely very potent. Plague Claw Catapult can tear through my infantry. The 2 Warp Lightning Cannons can decimate heavy cavalry. It's one of those things I would definitely recommend if you're playing as Skaven against Brettonia. Bring artillery. It'll do you wonders, as long as you can protect it. Plague Claw Catapults will start teeing off on my archers, as we discussed before, and just melting them. We're going to see, let's just look at these shots, immediately losing 14 miles there, and the Warp Lightning can take off 6 on the Grail Guardians. Now my opponent went very heavy with shooting here, and he's got 6 units of Skaven Slave Slingers, dirt cheap projectile unit, but with this many models, with this much spread, he's going to be able to get a bit of a crossfire. He's going to be able to hit me no matter where I manage to get my units. He's going to be able to shoot me the whole time. Now, unfortunately, because of that, his front line is pretty weak. It's only a bunch of clan rats, but they're backed by a Doomwheel for Fear and Terror, some Stormwind Halberds on either end for some AP anti-large, and then they are backed by 2 Rat Ogres to provide some mass and sort of staying power. For his lord, my opponent did bring Lord Skulk, who's got both of his summons, as well as, if we look, I'm actually not entirely sure what else he has. He's got, of course, Liber Roboticus and the Rod of Corruption, and he does have Pestilent Breath, all of which are very solid in this matchup. It's against Brettonia, because bogging down knights with infantry and being able to disrupt backlines and melt Brettonian infantry spam with Pestilent Breath, all very good. Now the Fey Enchantress is going to dive into these Skaven Slaves, and this was a bit of a mismicro on my opponent's part. He wasn't in a position to immediately pull back, so he's going to suffer pretty badly here. Although Grail Guardian's definitely getting shot by artillery. All these Skaven Slaves are suddenly broken, and with that he's lost a huge chunk of his shooting that he could have otherwise kept online. Now, meantime, my knights flanking around, pushing in on both flanks. I avoided this pocket of troops over here. Got my Knights Errant, my Defenders of the Fleur de Lis, bogging down these troops over here, just holding their own. While in the meantime, the Grand Lights push straight on through and get into these Clan Rats, and then they're going to be in a perfect position to push further wherever needed. Unfortunately, getting hit by Liber Bonicus there. Now, my opponent, this is actually a very smart move for my opponent's part, because if he cast it on the Fan Enchantress, that magic resist would screw him over completely. So he used it on the Realm Knights, killing off multiple models, probably close to 10, 15 models there. Very huge value if we look at Scroll. He's up to 20 kills, and most of those were on these Realm Knights. So great play there. Definitely worth mentioning. Now over here, the Rat Ogres are going to get slaughtered by the Grail Knights. You can see the Stormwind doing their best, but just not able to work their way around these cannons to melt the Knights. And so as this Warp Lightning Cannon and the Rat Ogres come offline, we're just going to be able to push through with our Cav and go for the next row of artillery. At this point, my opponent is basically out of anti-large. Stormmen are trying to push into the fray to bog down this infantry. These Stormmen are trying to pursue, but our Knights just keep pushing, and they're not even in lance formation, so they're just forcing their way through, getting on this catapult, and some of them are going to get on this Warp Lightning Cannon and take the crews offline, and one by one, the guns are going silent. In the meantime, Men-at-Arms are going to be pushing in. Certainly some of them getting terror-bombed by the Doom Wheel, but you know, with the Grail Guardians anchoring things in there with regrowth, they'll be able to hold rather well and just keep things stable. In the meantime, over here, the Holy Wardens of Lamaisantal pushing through the infantry line. They're now going to be able to pivot around and tie down the Stormmen, who are about to take a Chalice of Potions to the face. They're very blobbed up, and this is really not where they want to be in life, and unfortunately, they are going to get hit. Unfortunately, it goes a little off-center there, so it doesn't actually hit the dead center on the formation, but still huge damage. The Holy Wardens are going to start dicing through them pretty efficiently. With their terrible melee stats, the Stormmen really aren't going to be doing too hot. Elsewhere, the Fan Enchantress is actually going to come back in. You might think it's bad to get into halberds, but it's actually not a terrible idea because you need to be melting these guys down with that Mortis Engine effect. I believe it's like 15 damage a second, and it's going to be melting these guys very, very quickly and just ruining their day. Now, certainly, that lovely cast of Pestilent Breath melts the Holy Wardens pretty well, but the Plague Monks are going to start falling apart, and the Stormmen are not going to last much longer as the face starts melting them away. Elsewhere in the meantime, Stormmen still in hot pursuit, trying to get on top of these Knights, but the artillery crews going offline. Plague Claw snuffed out, Warp Lightning Cannon in full retreat. And now the guns, slingers in the back being shut down by the Knights. And the Knights don't really have too much target. Now, certainly the balance of power is still very even. You can see these Clan Rats here got on top of my archers, who are they're now being shut down by the defenders of the Fleur-de-Lis. So some good value attained there. You can see these Clan Rats up to 30 plus kills. So doing some good work and definitely shutting down the back, or trying to shut down the back line. But in the long run, those archers are going to come back online. These fire arrows are just going to be melting these Rat Ogres with their pitiful armor values. And this pocket, for example, is just stuck here, and in the meantime, the Fan Enchantress and her goons, the Holy Wardens, are just pushing around, shutting down these back lines, disrupting them. These Men-at-Arms are going to bog down these Stormmen with halberds. The Knights of the Lionhearted here are going to get routed finally by the Doom Wheel, but you know, it doesn't matter. There's 4 of them left at this point, so it's whatever. In the meantime, the Holy Wardens, though, and the Men-at-Arms are just going to push in, start crushing these not Plague Monks, these Clan Rats and these Stormmen. And in the back line, the Grail Knights, 200 kills, 142 kills, slaughtering these Skaven slaves, getting all these troops off the field because we don't want that pressure coming in at all. Men-at-Arms are rallying on the periphery, which is really good because now we're going to be able to push in, pressure Skrull, tie down these Rat Ogres. And the Knights Errant, you know, they wipe out these Clan Rats, and now they're going to be able to come back in and provide further support. And you can see the Peasant Bows, they've been a constant distraction in this game, and it's made them very valuable, despite the fact that they haven't actually done much damage-wise. Now, meantime, the Fan Enchantress here draining all these troops. Stormmen once again being Mortis Engine into oblivion. The Holy Wardens of Lamaisantal, of course, just borderline unbreakable. They've got crazy leadership. They've got frenzy and all that sort of stuff. So they're just holding tooth and nail and destroying these Stormmen. And Skrull, you know, trying to get in here on the Fae, but he can't do much to her because he's got that magic attack. And the Fan Enchantress, she's got 60% magic resist. So even if he hits her, he's going to be doing like less than half of his normal damage. He's really weak. Unfortunately for my opponent here, the Doom Wheel, who was kind of his last hope to get a terror out or something of those lines, does get snagged by the Knights. It's going to be dragged down to the muck. You can see these Grand Knights who got hit by Liber Bonicus earlier are now surrounding it and beating the snot out of it in close quarters. And it is going to go down here. So this vile Skaven machinery, the vile ret filth, is going to be run down by these chivalrous Knights. And shortly it's going to explode, I think. Will it? Oh, it just runs into a tree there and finally goes down. In the meantime, though, the rest of my opponent's army has basically buckled. You can see these Grail Knights escorting some of these foul vermin off the field. Rat Ogres full flight. Despite still having 7 models, they're just so low on HP that it's not relevant at this point. And Skrull gets surrounded, bogged down by Men-at-Arms. Now, certainly, he could probably fight his way out of these Men-at-Arms, but as the Knights are going to start plowing in, the Grail Guardians, Fan Enchantress, and all these troops, they're going to start melting Skrull away. Skrull doesn't have much in the way of survivability. besides his, I guess he does have, well, 45 melee defense isn't really that much. He's not really all that survivable defensive wise. He doesn't even have physical resistance, so he's going to go down pretty badly there, and that is going to be GG for the Brettonians. So Pyrrhic victory for Brettonia. Now certainly there were some things when I think, well, and first, you can see this kill count here, 332 kills on the Grail Knights. I was talking about the Greatswords getting 400 kills in a recent replay against Undead, but I think 332 is pretty crazy as well. You can definitely get some good value, as you can see out of them. The Grail Guardians, they held the line. The cavalry, of course, incredibly valuable, but also the infantry doing its country proud. The Holy Wardens, especially, 150 kills. They mulched through clan rats, they mulched through those Stormvermin, and they kept the enemy busy while those knights were able to run amok in the back line, and that's really what matters. Now, for my opponent's build, I think there were a few mistakes with the decision making here. I don't actually think Skaven Slave Slingers are that smart way to go. Now, they're certainly not that expensive, but I think you'd be better off bringing more Skaven Clan Rat Spears, get more coverage around your artillery so you can get more value out of your artillery. I'd probably bring double, maybe triple Warp Lightning Cannon. I'd ditch the Doom Wheel. I don't really think it's, because there's usually so much cavalry from Brettonia, it's going to get shut down. And then bring a front line. I think Plague Monks are a good way to go because you can kind of mulch through your opponent's front line. And at the same time, your artillery can really take your opponent off, take your opponent's cavalry to Pound Town as long as you're able to protect it with anti-large troops. Now, one of the important things to keep in mind, certainly, is that this map was not all that favorable to Skaven. It was very clumped. It was very uneven, and there was lots of bad terrain, which makes Warp Lightning Cannon tough to use. But if you're worried about terrain, try Poison and Globes. They can do okay. They're not amazing, but they can definitely do the job in a pinch. As long as you're able to protect them reasonably well, you can sort of add speed, have a lot of speed bump troops. Skrull can almost single-handedly win you the front line fight. The other option is to go with Stormmen. You can bring like 3 units of Stormmen who will trade really well with most Brettonian infantry, especially if you debuff them with something like Wither, and then have enough chaff sort of to absorb your opponent's cavalry on the flanks while artillery works them over. So I think that's really the way to go. I think this build here just didn't really have the tools to stop the cavalry. Two Stormmen and Halberds tried their hardest, but they just weren't able to make it work, and especially because the Warp Lightning Cannons initially were a little out of position. They weren't able to get the shots they needed beforehand, so our knights just got so much value. But regardless, very good game to my opponent, Kit and I here. I do hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you found it entertaining and fun to watch. If you did, be sure to leave a like and subscribe below to keep up with additional content. If you have any comments, any criticism, any questions of your own, be sure to post them, and I will do my best to respond as soon as I can. Like I said earlier, if the mic sucks, be sure to let me know, because I need to know, or I would really appreciate that. Regardless, thank you all for watching, and I will see you all in the next one. Wyvern out.